Here's something I couldn't make sense of for years. The woman that everyone can count on, the one who always says yes, remembers her birthday, never makes waves, gets along with everybody, is so often the woman who, when she's honest, feels completely alone. She's surrounded by people who adore her, but deeply known by none of them. How does that happen? How do you get the very thing you worked for, being liked and accepted, and still end up feeling like a stranger in your own life? I asked that question for a long time, mostly because I was that woman. I've spent years now around women who look like they've got it all together, and underneath all of it, most of them still don't feel qualified. They don't feel good enough. They feel like imposters in their own lives. I know that feeling from the inside. I lived from this one identity for a long time. In fact, I got so good at it, I almost lost myself completely. Today, I want to name the identity we almost never call by its real name. It's called people-pleasing. Here's what it took me years to figure out. People-pleasing isn't a niceness problem. It is an identity. People-pleasing is building your whole sense of who you are on one shaky foundation. I am what others think of me. And most people-pleasers have no idea they're doing it, because it looks like kindness. It looks like being agreeable, being helpful, just being the good girl you were praised for being. From the time we're tiny, we learn what pleases the people around us. And that's not bad. That's how God wired us to live in community. It goes wrong when pleasing people becomes who you are, when you're willing to set your true self aside to be whoever you think the room wants. Now, before you decide this isn't for you and go tune me out, I want to tell you something that might catch you off guard. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, this isn't me. I don't care what anyone thinks. Well, stay with me, because being controlled by the need to not care what people think is still being controlled by people. If you take pride in how independent you are, if you reject people before they can reject you, if you have to keep proving you don't need anyone, you are still building your identity on what others think. You're just on the other side of the same coin. Both of these, desperate for approval or fiercely above it, run on the same engine: fear. Fear of what people think. And neither one is freedom. So what does having people-pleasing as your identity actually cost? I mean, really, what's the big deal? It makes you easier to get along with. It makes for less drama and conflict. Those are good things, right? Maybe, except there really is a cost to it. It costs you. You adjust yourself to every room until you can't remember what you actually believe. You walk out of ordinary conversations drained, not from connection, but from the work of being whoever you thought they needed. You start to feel like an imposter because some part of you knows you are performing. And here's the cruelest part. You can be surrounded by people, loved by all of them, and yet completely alone, because not one of them has ever met the real you, because you never let them. For years, I lived as a chameleon. It's not like it was a conscious decision to be that. I just became whoever I was around. I lived this way for a long time. Here's what it looked like. When I'd go on play dates with the moms, I talked about our kids and took on their opinions on discipline in schools like they were my own. In my community college classes, I talked about books and big ideas and stayed quiet about the fact that I'd spent that morning cleaning up after toddlers and singing Baby Shark. When I was at church, I asked smart questions about Greek verbs and theology, and never once asked the question I actually needed to ask, which was, does God still love me when I don't measure up? And in every one of these situations, I was afraid that if they saw the real me, they'd figure out I wasn't as put together as I was pretending to be. I knew that the person they thought they liked didn't really exist. It wasn't me. My life became so filled with adapting to the beliefs of those around me that I started losing track of what I actually believed myself. I had a lot of people in my life, but none of them knew the real me. To be honest, this started very early for me in life. I learned when I was very young that the fastest way to make the tension in the room settle down was to be exactly who everyone needed or expected me to be. And I carried that straight into adulthood. When I came onto a church staff more than 20 years ago, I was coming out of a background where I'd learned to wear a mask that said everything was always fine. In my early years on that church staff, I still didn't feel safe enough to take the mask off. So instead of becoming more authentic, I just got better at hiding. So here's what I think about. In my yard, I have morning glory. Now, I used to think this was a flower. It's not. It's a weed. It winds itself around every other plant until you almost can't tell where the real plant ends and the vine begins. And you can't just pull off the parts you can see. The roots go deep. That was people-pleasing in me. It was so tangled into who I was that I couldn't tell anymore when I was being myself and when I was performing. That flash of feeling like an imposter, that was the morning glory vine squeezing the life out of me. So what's the way out? Do you just spray weed killer on everything? How do you begin to untangle the weed of people-pleasing and allow the real you to reach up and grow? It starts with a distinction that changes everything. Here it is, and write it down because it might change your whole perspective. The opposite of belonging is not rejection. The opposite of belonging is fitting in. I know that doesn't sound right at first. Aren't they the same thing? That is the lie that fitting in will tell you, but it actually never feels right. Brené Brown talks about the difference between belonging and fitting in, and it wrecked me in the best way. Fitting in is sizing up the room and becoming who you have to be accepted. Belonging doesn't ask you to change who you are. It asks you to be who you are. God designed us for the second one. Because here's the truth sitting under the whole thing. The problem was never wanting to belong. God made you for community. God exists in community, Father, Son, and Spirit. And He built that longing into you on purpose. The problem is where you've been taking that longing and what you've been willing to sacrifice to satisfy it. We reach for human approval first, and we hope it will fill a space that only God was ever meant to fill. And it just leaves us hollow. Here is the mental exchange that we need to do. These are the same 4 steps that I always come back to. First, recognize. Recognize the moment you're performing. That imposter feeling is your signal. Replace. You replace the lie with the truth. Ask yourself, am I trying to fit in or am I trying to belong? Am I willing to give up who I really am to be accepted by people who don't even know the real me? Galatians 1:10 says, am I now trying to win the approval of people or of God? That's a good truth to go back to. Then, repeat. Repeat it until being yourself stops feeling dangerous, until you lose that fear of rejection, until being who you really are feels better than that false sense of fitting in. And lastly, you remember. You remember the lie and you remember the truth. Because just like the morning glory, this one comes back over and over again. But now you know what it looks like and you can pull it out while it's still small. And if you need proof that God can do something with a chronic people pleaser, open your Bible and take a look at Peter. The night Jesus was arrested, Peter, bold, loyal Peter, stood in a courtyard and 3 times denied he even knew him. To a servant girl, not a scary soldier, just a little girl. He denied the whole identity he'd built his life on. to protect himself from the crowd. And then the rooster crowed, and Jesus turned and looked right at him. That line just pierces my heart. But thank goodness that is not where it ends. After the resurrection, Jesus asks Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" 1 time for each denial. And here's the part I love. The first 2 times, Jesus asks for the highest, all-in kind of love, agape. "Peter, do you agape me?" But Peter, who is now humbled by his failure, can only answer with a lesser word, phileo, the friendship kind of love. "Yes, Lord, I phileo you." So the 3rd time Jesus asks Peter, he changes his word. Jesus comes down and meets Peter exactly where he is. He accepts the love Peter can actually give instead of performance. "Peter, do you phileo me?" And Peter responded, "Yes." That is what God does with us. He's not waiting for the polished, agreeable, everyone likes me version of us. He wants the real one. He wants who he created us to be. That's the version he wants to work with. And oh my goodness, Jesus is able to do great things with that version. So if you're like the woman we started with, surrounded by people but completely alone, here's what I want you to hear. You don't have to earn your way in. You already belong. You've been working so hard for the one thing you already have. This week, I'd like you to do one honest thing. Try one moment of telling the truth about what you think, or what you need, or how you're really doing with one person. That's it. That's the first move. If you could live one full day without needing a single person's approval, just being completely unguardedly yourself, what's the one word for how that would feel? Free? Light? Terrifying? Drop it in the comments. I would truly love to read yours. And I promise you, you're not the only chameleon who's tired. So next week we stay right with the same thread. Position will be the next identity we look at. Who are you when the title, the role, the thing on your name tag goes away? And if this is your first time here, this is a series, one disguise at a time, one identity at a time, all the way from hollow to whole. Subscribe and come with me, because you belong here too. See you next time.